there's this interesting thing, and again, watching the clips of old times, it made me think of like West Wing in the speed of thought of language. There's a kind of sense sometimes that it's not necessarily how we actually speak to each other. You know, sometimes we talk, we compute, we think, and then we respond. You're almost responding on the breath or on the beat. Is that true? Is that something that
I mean, I think Harold's thing was that language was simply a smokescreen, that he had a group of friends from the age of 16, and I remember they all came in, and he said, none of us, we always say the opposite of what we think, you know, in that English way, so that he said, you know, if they come to see a play, they go, well, that was shit. You know, and of course we'd all know as English people that was a great compliment, but they were too embarrassed to say, you know, you were incredible, you were just marvelous, I loved everything about it. So for him, language was always a sort of subterfuge of what you were thinking. Never actually it was just as polite as you could have this sort of tumultuous, you know, murderous instincts going on underneath, and you would be as polite as possible and go, come in. And that would be your one line, you know, but, and then it would be terrifying. So he always, and I honestly think as well that sort of after the Second World War, and really the two wars, really, the whole business of saying what you meant and having your heart on your sleeve and telling someone you loved them and speaking openly about what you felt disappeared, and language fractured and became, you know, distrusted. And if you look at Beckett's, if you look at the poetry of the time, if you look at the painting of the time, the whole modes of communication became much more distorted, and Harold really had a phenomenal ear for that. So almost nobody says what they mean. And I mean, and so there is this sort of wellspring of feeling that's going on underneath the whole play that's actually what the play's about. And then what you hear them say is just the tip of an iceberg. And that's, you know, definitely, I mean, it's interesting what you say about people speaking what they feel. I mean, I had a tremendous sort of time, probably 10, 15 years ago, when everything I was acting, I just felt faults with. And really, I always felt that if I was on film or in theatre, that I never actually in real life responded at the speed that I was asked to respond in a play. So someone would say, you know, your wife's dead. And you'd go, or whatever. You'd have a massive speech, especially in Shakespeare. You know, the Fulvia, thy wife is dead, and then Antony has to sort of go, you know, boom into this huge thing. And my experience of anything, even people who made me angry, was, you know, I'd be driving back about an hour later and have a sort of conversation with myself about it, and maybe a year later I'd get up the nerve to say something about it, and maybe, you know, 6 years later I'd realize I'd been in the wrong relationship or something like that. You know, so that and when I did Betrayal, it was the first time I felt that had been allowed, because Betrayal goes backwards over a series of years. You are able to play, you know, someone gives you a piece of information, says, I'm having an affair, I don't love you anymore. And you go, okay, well, shall I get the drinks? And you don't have any language that's able to cope with the enormous shock and upset that you have. And then in the next scene, it's a year later, and you can see the person going, well, shall I get the drinks or whatever? And they've had time to feel all those things and to, you know, so you were able to play and act at a real speed. And it almost never happens, you know, even on film or everything, they have to see you respond to the information you're given. Otherwise it's not dramatic. Mm-hmm. And Harold managed magnificently to understand that. And so it seemed, even though it is, as you say, very musical and stylized almost, it seems truer to me than a lot of writing.
But he's developing at the same time as a sort of kitchen sink drama and the beginning of soaps as well.
Yeah, and that sort of gritty realism, and yes.